The Metis Tech Show.
Welcome to the Metis Tech Show, a show for HVAC professionals by HVAC professionals.
The Metis Tech Show.
It's so busy.
All right, Juan, so I was just out. We're in Georgia, by the way, this week, and I was just outside, and I can't believe how warm it is. And
I love the weather.
It's incredible. I left 40 degrees back in Boston.
It was 38 when I left home.
Yeah, on Monday morning.
Especially with the storm we just had that weekend. That Saturday passed.
We
had 4 inches of rain.
Yeah, I lost power for most of the day, down tree limbs. No Wi-Fi. My kids are going
nuts,
bananas. They thought the world was ending. They love it because they think that they're not going to have school for a week because the trees are falling and Armageddon. You know, they're not going to have school. But I told them, you'll go to school. You'll be fine.
Oh yeah.
But the Wi-Fi really disturbed them.
No doubt.
They were upset. But anyway, welcome to the Metis Tech Show, a show for the service tech in the truck, the installing technician. This show is for you. So we're going to talk about a new product that just came out, the intelli-HEAT Cased Coil, or the PAA. And with me today is Juan Cardona.
Howdy.
Juan is technical instructor out of the Ohio Training Center. And myself, Steve Pimentel, technical instructor out of Boston. So we're going to talk about this new product because there are so many questions on the intelli-HEAT Cased Coil and how to install it, how to wire it. And I think it was important for us to put out a few podcast episodes on specific intelli-HEAT topics, right? Important intelli-HEAT need-to-knows, right? Need-to-know information on the intelli-HEAT. And today we're going to talk about the intelli-HEAT control wiring and just basic wiring of the intelli-HEAT as far as feeding it power, as far as the furnace integrating into the intelli-HEAT control box.
And Steve, before we get into this, we need to look at this product as we have been doing for years. It's an add-on heat pump.
Yeah.
You're adding a heat pump system to a gas furnace. We've been doing this for years. So this is nothing new. Yes, we're using our product, connecting it to the furnace. So we have to make sure that the wiring is done correctly so communication communicates correctly with the gas furnace. But it's nothing more than just an add-on heat pump.
Right. So what did we do back in the 90s when we had Cased coils?
I
mean, let's be honest here. We had a Cased coil, and we were taking that Cased coil and adapting it to an existing furnace and giving the customer, and even back then, we weren't really doing a lot of heat, at least I wasn't doing a lot of heat pump installs. It was just adding cooling to an existing furnace in someone's home.
I did a lot of add-on heat pumps.
Yeah. So we're looking at the same thing here.
Yes.
Except now we're dealing with Mitsubishi electric inverter technology, right? So we got the best of both worlds here. You have your high efficiency heat pump. You have the ability to heat with that heat pump. You have the ability to cool, and you also have the ability to heat the space with the furnace.
Yeah, and I always told the contractors when I would sell the product or the homeowners, you're saving the hotter heat for the coldest part.
Yeah.
That's why the gas furnace is going to look at it.
Yeah,
you're
absolutely.
holding the hotter heat, hence the gas furnace, to the colder temperatures.
Yeah, so this cased coil comes with a control panel. That's the difference, right?
Yes.
We have the logic built into a control panel that will control whether or not the heat pump is running in heat mode or it needs the assistance of the furnace to run. And that's where we can reach our balance point, right? We can reach our economic balance point, save energy. If the heat pump can't keep up economically with the space, now we can switch over to our furnace.
And it's going to be either or. It can't be both.
Right.
because the coil gets mounted on top of the furnace, which is downstream from the heat exchanger. So imagine if they were both running in the heating mode. You can't.
Yeah.
It's either going to be heat pump heating or gas furnace heating.
And when we designed this intelli-HEAT package, we designed it with the customer in mind.
Absolutely.
It's all about the customer being comfortable. So no matter what happens, we're always going to favor the furnace side, supplying heat to that space if need be. If the heat pump can keep up economically with the space, again, that'll happen. And we'll talk about some of the logic, probably not in this episode, because we're going to talk about installation wiring side on the intelli-HEAT Cased Coil.
So, Steve, how do you connect the outdoor unit to the control panel?
So if you've hooked up any Mitsubishi residential product, one-to-one, multi-zone, we power the indoor unit with S1 and S2, and we use S3 for communication. So we're just wiring from the outdoor unit, S1, S2, S3, to the control box, the PAA control box, S1, S2, S3. Yes, there is a terminal block in the control box.
Yep.
Labeled so, and you're running and following the same rules as you did before, right?
With any of our products.
Yeah, we want a solid home run with S3. We don't want wire nuts in there. Does it need a service switch between S1, S2, S3? It's optional, but I'll tell you what, it's real handy to have a service switch inside of a home, but we need a special type of switch.
Yes, it's an arcless switch, 3-pole arcless
Yes.
switch.
So 3-pole arcless switch, just like we would use on a standard wall mount, MUZ, one-to-one, P-Series, whatever it is. Again, it's optional, but I do recommend a service switch somewhere at the PAA control box. Now, as far as mounting the control box, we have a limitation. We're limited to the length of the thermistors that are attached to the A coil. And these thermistors are measuring inlet refrigerant temperature and outlet refrigerant temperature out of the coil. They're 10 feet long. So we can mount the control box onto the side of the A coil, being very careful.
Yes.
And there are measurements that we have to go by, and the installation manual spells those out specifically. They may be in millimeters. We're working on changing that to inches. Okay, but common sense.
Don't use 3-inch sheet metal screws.
Right. And we're going to make sure that we don't drill into the coil. I got to say, I've guilty of doing that in the past. I was new to this trade and used too long of a screw in the wrong place. And yeah, it was bad. But we're also going to be careful on the right side of the cased coil. We also have a drain pan. Now, that drain pan is for the horizontal right discharge position. And we want to remove that drain pan to begin with. That's if we have an upflow installation, we're going to want to remove that drain pan.
Upflow or downflow.
Exactly. And that may hinder airflow. So that's why we're removing that drain pan. So be careful when you're also screwing the PAA control box to the side of the A coil that you're not drilling into that drain pan. Can't stress that enough. So now that we have our PAA control box mounted, we've run our S1, S2, S3 from the outdoor unit to the PAA. We're still following all of the same rules. Wire size, always refer to the installation manual for your wire size, right? Goes without saying. Now we need to get into wiring the control box to the actual furnace.
Correct. And that really you could do on the single stage. Let's talk about single stage first. And that will take a 5-conductor thermostat wire.
All right. So what do you mean by single stage, Juan?
Single stage is one fan speed. That the furnace is operating at the same fan speed every time there's heating.
And there's one stage of heat.
Yes.
Right? One stage of heat, and maybe one stage of Y.
Heat or cooling.
Your Y terminal on the furnace may just be a one single fan speed, right? We're going to get into fan speeds in a little bit because we have a lot of options and depending on the type of furnace that you're installing, we have multiple options with changing fan speeds. But when we say single stage furnace, we're talking one stage of heat.
Yep.
And you're going to see that with just a W terminal rather than a W1 and W2 showing you two stages, a two-stage furnace. But so basic single-stage wiring one, where are we wiring to and from?
Well, we're running the thermostat wire from the furnace control board into terminal block TB-A at the control module on the coil box.
Okay. So when you're looking at that control box, and depending on the orientation of the control box, and I just want to point something out I didn't mention before, the PAA control box has a interface on it.
Yep.
Right? It has push buttons for test mode, for status, whether the system's in normal mode or in emergency mode. We want to make sure we show those buttons. We don't want to face that control box in a position where we have the technician or the homeowner has to look underneath that control box for the buttons. We want to face that out.
Face that out to where you're standing so you can see it right away.
Yeah. So that's going to put your terminal blocks TBA and TBB sideways,
Correct.
so to speak, right? So know your terminal blocks and what terminal blocks you're tying into. So you just mentioned we're running from the furnace control board. We're going to have our red, our common, our yellow, our white, and green single stage running up to the terminal block TBA. And that's labeled inside of the PAA control box. There is a sticker labeling that terminal block. And once we have that wired in and we're all set, now we can change fan speeds on the furnace to establish 350 CFMs per ton.
Minimum.
Yes. So that's the rule. Now, we're going to have a different episode just on changing fan speeds and on furnaces, and we'll get into that in that episode coming up shortly. Now, on TBA, we also have two terminals called M1 and M2. Don't get that confused with MNet. That's not what that is. It is a connection for any of Mitsubishi's MA controllers.
Which is a 12 volts DC signal, talking about the MNet.
Yeah.
The MNet is a 26 to 30 volts DC signal, but this is not. This is for an MA controller, which is a 12 volts DC signal.
So those first two terminals on TBA, and they come off the bottom side of the terminal block. Those first two terminals are for the MA controller. We're going to get into controllers in just a few minutes here. Now let's move over to TBB terminal block in the PAA control box and what that's used for. Basically, when you open up your accessories package with the PAA Cased Coil, you'll get a bag with your service manual, your install manual, your troubleshooting manual, and along with that, we provide a condensate switch. It's actually the Rector Seal SS2 condensate switch. And we also provide a CN4F connector that condensate switch will plug into. And we're going to need to take that connector CN4F and plug it into the control box of the PAA, the control board that is in the control box. Also with that, we're going to get a small bracket, a metal bracket where we can mount this, and by drilling a hole into the return side of that ductwork, the return side of the furnace, we're going to pick a good location now, right? We're going to make sure that we're in the return air stream, but not too close to the furnace itself. Right?
And another thing, if you're introducing fresh air to the return, these sensors need to be downstream from it.
Right.
Because you want to measure mixed air, not just return air.
Right. And any bypass ducts we want to stay away from. We want we want to be able to see the total return air.
The main return.
So that bracket allows us to connect a very important thermistor. It's our return air thermistor, TH1. And that is just like any Mitsubishi electric wall mount heat pump, floor mount, one-way cassette, any indoor unit that you see at Mitsubishi has a return air thermistor. That's this return air thermistor, and that has to be connected, or else the system will error out. So we have to make sure we connect that to TBB terminal block, and you'll see two terminals marked return and TH1, and that thermistor just ties right into that. Right now, there is also an emergency heat preset or non-adjustable thermostat provided, a NAT, yes.
NAT.
An NAT, non-adjustable thermostat provided with the PAA kit or accessory bag, and that's a preset non-adjustable thermostat at 65 degrees.
Yep.
So that ties into the TBB, the right side terminal block, across W1 and R. So if for any reason we had a communication fault with our heat pump side, right? Our Mitsubishi system had a communication fault or any type of error or anything where that system was not able to run. That non-adjustable thermostat is there to sense temperature and let the furnace run and
maintain
be controlled
65
and
degrees.
maintain 65 degrees.
Because
be
if
controlled.
you look at the one schematic, it's a switch, right? It's all it is. It's just a thermostatic
exactly.
switch. So when the switch closes, you're taking the 24-volt circuit, taking it straight to W1, which then energizes the gas furnace, maintaining the house or whatever the building temperature to 65 degrees.
Yes. So the again, I can't stress this enough. The only time that non-adjustable thermostat is in play is in an emergency situation.
Correct.
Now, if it's a two-stage furnace, we can jump from W1 to W2 and grab both of those stages of heat. So we can just bring that furnace right into 2 stages of heat automatically. Do we have to use the non-adjustable thermostat? No. You can use the existing thermostat that maybe the customer had. That could be a Honeywell T87 that used to be on the wall, and we can tie that thermostat into TBB in
Correct.
place of the NAT thermostat. Again, that's not going to control the furnace on its own. It's only if the system goes into an emergency operation.
Or if it faults out.
Yes. And again, any third-party thermostat would work. And if the customer had an issue with our system, our Mitsubishi electric system, as far as the outdoor unit and the PAA control box, that emergency thermostat, that maybe existing thermostat they had in the home will take over, and the customer will run their furnace just like they did in the past.
And going back to that 2-stage furnace or 2-stage heating, you could use a single-stage thermostat, but just make sure you jump W1 and W2.
Right.
So the furnace operates as a single-stage furnace.
Yes. Yep, absolutely. So everything that is needed is supplied in that accessory bag, again, to keep the customer comfortable through the whole thing. Now let's look at 2-stage heating. What's different with 2-stage heating?
One wire.
Yeah, basically, right? So we have a W1, and for 2-stage heating, we have a W2.
Right. We have 5 conductors for the single-stage furnace. We have 6 conductors for the 2-stage furnace.
Now, different furnaces may have other conductors. They may have different controls options on it, but we're sticking with the basics. RC, Y1, Y2, W1, W2, and green. All right. So what we need to establish again and now we're talking about the heat pump and cooling side of the intelli-HEAT. We want to make sure that we're tapping into speeds on that furnace that can provide up to 350 CFM per ton.
Right.
That's the rule. We need that 350 CFM per ton. The logic in the PAA control board works very close to what a Mitsubishi indoor unit works as far as fan speed based on set point temperature,
right,
or space temperature. The farther away we are from space temperature, the higher the fan speed.
That fan is going to ramp up.
Yep. So we're going to want to tap into the higher fan speed on that furnace, right? And many furnaces can come through with medium, low
right.
speed, medium, high.
Yeah, different ways of selecting
speed.
it. It could be a dip switch. It could be just a jumper. It could be a plug.
Right.
Could be, you'll have to look at the gas furnace to see how their speeds are controlled.
Right. So as we get closer to set point in the logic, we're going to grab a lower fan speed. If I want to connect green to, Y1 to Y1 and green to green, now I have 2 different fan speeds to work from. So very customizable. There's also a function setting, which we're going to talk about in another episode, where we can change from single speed fan to multiple speed fan or 2-speed fan operation. Function setting 23, which makes this very customizable as far as how we can set our airflow with that furnace.
And you've got a good point, Steve, on that green wire, the G circuit, because most current furnaces now, the fan only function typically is 50%.
Yeah.
So you got to be careful how you connect that G wire.
Yep. And, when I talk about speed taps, and we're going to, like I said, we're going to jump into this in a more specific episode of the intelli-HEAT. We'll talk about speed taps because they could be just a matter of moving wires.
Right.
Or they could be dip switches on a furnace where we have an ECM motor and we're flipping dip switches to establish a certain fan speed.
Yep.
So now we've talked about single stage, second stage. We've talked about the non-adjustable thermostat. We have all of our control connections. We're running these just like we would with any cased coil on a furnace thermostat wire. Just basic thermostat wire. We have a 24-volt board in the PAA control box. It's something that I'm very used to, over the years installing cased coils and wiring thermostats, wiring furnaces. It's just basic thermostat wire, right?
18 gauge.
Yeah. So now let's talk about our control options. Now let's jump up to what controllers we can connect to the intelli-HEAT. So we're looking at MA controllers. Let's talk about one style of controller, our wired MA. So we have the choice of...
Now you're talking about the simple MA or the deluxe MA?
Right. We have the simple MA.
And we also have a touch MA.
Yes. So multiple MA controllers. So how many wired controllers do we have in total? 3.
Yeah.
3 basically.
Yep.
3 basic models that we have this, as Juan mentioned, the simple MA, which is a very simple controller for the homeowner, not so simple for the service techs out there when we have to go in and do some function settings, but very simple for the homeowner as far as settings, push buttons, functions,
and use.
Yeah, and options on the front of the controller, on and off, mode button, temperature up and down, fan speed, very basic. Then we get into our touch MA, and it's a Bluetooth touchscreen controller. And we can upload a picture to this, put my favorite sports team on there. I can put a picture of my big largemouth bass I caught last month on there.
I would have my grandchildren.
And you would have your grandchildren. So awesome. Great controller. You can upload a picture to it. You can mirror what's on the screen onto your device. And I'm able to do function settings and request codes with the Touch MA. With the Deluxe MA,
my favorite.
Yes, the PAR 40 that we're at right now. We had the PAR, and I'm going back a few PARs ago. So we got the PAR 20, PAR 21, PAR 30, PAR 33, and now we're at the PAR 40.
Yep.
I might have got one of those PARs incorrect, but when we say PAR, that's just the first 3 letters of the model number. But we're at the PAR 40 now, and the PAR 40 Deluxe MA controller is packed full of energy savings functions.
It's great. It's a great controller.
Easy to run through as far as for the homeowner, for the service tech, setting function settings, setting request codes. It's used as a tool out by service techs.
I used to have it in my toolbox.
Yeah, because you can set function settings, and let's say you just have an MHK2 controller on this PAA. Well, I can come in with a Deluxe MA, do some function settings and request codes that I can't do
with the MHK.
With the MHK2. And once those settings are put in, I could disconnect that Deluxe MA, wrap it up, throw it in my tool bag for the next job.
Yeah.
Right?
I loved it for the request codes because the request codes, I'll get it out.
There you go.
I don't need any tools.
Right.
Because it gives me temperature, pipe temperature, air temperatures. It gives me pressures on certain equipment.
Yep.
It's all right there in that screen.
Yeah. discharge superheat
Yes.
in the outdoor unit, outside air temp, like you said. It's just all around fantastic controller. Now we also have on the PAA control box a CN105 connector. So let's talk about CN105 as far as what we can connect to the intelliHEAT. And basically that's Kumo Cloud.
Correct.
That's the MHK2, one of our most popular controllers.
Wireless controller.
Yeah. And then the thermostat interface, which I think is going to be a very popular controller with this PAA. Just for the fact that the customer may want to use the thermostat that is already in place.
It's already there.
And that could be anything from a very basic single-stage thermostat, like the T87, right?
Yeah.
The round T87 that everybody's used to. Or it could be a sophisticated touchscreen Honeywell controller. They want to use a third-party controller with a PAA. We got you back.
Whatever they're used to. I mean, you don't have to change it.
Yep, we got the thermostat interface, plugs into CN105. The thermostat interface, very important. You cannot use a PAC 444 model. You have to use the new thermostat interface PAC 445.
Correct.
And along with that PAC 445, you will get a small wiring harness accessory, and that plugs into the PAA control box connector CNH02.
Yep.
And that allows you to connect, that connects actually to that harness. And it's a little different than what we're used to out in the field with the thermostat interface normally. That harness that plugs into the CNH02 on the board of the PAA control box wires into the thermostat interface as common Y1, Y2,
Yep.
W1, W2, green, right? So where do you connect your third-party controller? Well, TBB. Now TBB is being used with the third-party controller to control that PAA intelliHEAT Cased Coil.
So yeah, I mean
furnace.
that's you made the point. You don't want to order a PAC 444 because you're not going to have that needed harness.
Yes.
You've got to order that PAC 445.
Right. That's really important. And so a little bit different. Now the thermostat interface, how do we do function settings with the thermostat interface? Well, we have to use the dip switches that are in the thermostat interface to set our function settings. For instance, function setting 23 for adjusting fan speed. And again, we're going to get into that in another episode.
Yes.
But we have just talked about our basic wiring to the control box and started with S1, S2, S3 from the outdoor unit to the control box, just like we're used to with Mitsubishi electric heat pumps currently. We talked about wiring the thermostat wire from the furnace, single stage and second stage, right? So from the furnace, thermostat wire on RC, W1 or W, Y, and G
Right.
up to TVA terminal block on the PAA control box. And then we talked about wiring second stage,
Correct.
right? Again, we can find all this information on mylinkdrive.com, service manual, troubleshooting manual, installation manual, right? We talked about all the controller options, our Touch MA, our Simple MA. We have the Par 40 Deluxe MA and our either Kumo Cloud, MHK2, or thermostat interface.
I mean, the wiring side is not hard. It's
is.
no different
Yes.
from what we do today.
Right. Don't let it intimidate you. It's really not that bad if you know how to wire a thermostat.
Look at the wiring schematics.
If you
That's all
know,
you got to do.
If you know how to wire a thermostat, you can wire
Absolutely.
the PAA, the intelliHEAT, not a problem at all. All right. So thank you for joining us on this episode, and well, hopefully this helps you out in your next intelliHEAT install, and we'll see you on the next one.
All right. Hasta la vista,
Adios.
baby.